Hello and welcome to MySecurity TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm with MySecurity Media, and today we're going to be looking at aerospace and space. We're going to be looking at the Resilient Multi-Mission Space Program with Rod Smith, the Starshot leader, and this is within the Intelligence, Surveillance and Space Division of the Defence Science and Technology Group. So then we'll spend the first part of our episode. Then we're going to be looking at drone detection, and AVCRM and Department 13 have integrated a compliance and risk management platform with the Department 13 drone detection system. So we're going to be joined by the CEOs, Jonathan King, who is with AVCRM, and Lee Croft, CEO with Department 13. Just as we do, aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities and infrastructure. If you're happy to be listening, let us know. Say g'day from wherever you're listening in the world. Press like to share it out with your colleagues. We should be streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and various Facebook channels. Main one is the Asia Pacific Security Magazine, and we may release this one as a cybersecurity weekly podcast. But we'll go for at least that 45 to 60-minute period. Just a quick catch-up from Friday's episode. We crossed to New York with Sam Crowther, the founder and CEO with Casada. The network wasn't great, so there's slight audio issues, but it's worth having listened to, particularly if you're into botnet mitigation. And then we crossed to Sean Duca, Vice President with Palo Alto Networks. He is the Regional Chief Security Officer for the Asia Pacific and Japan region, looking at the threat report 2021 for ransomware, with ransomware tripling over the last 12 months. So well worth checking that one out. And that one will be released as a Cybersecurity Weekly podcast. And also looking forward to this Friday, we're going to be looking at the Secure Board. This is a book launch with Anna Lebel and Claire Pales. Most of us in Australia will know Claire or her podcast show as well. And this is her second book. So looking forward to diving into that. I've got a copy. We should be doing a book giveaway as well. So please tune in on Friday morning. And likewise, a good reason to tune in, we've got Lani Rafiti, who's the Regional Director with Clarity, and we're looking at IoT security and the smart meter exploit with Schneider Electric. So a good one, and looking forward to seeing Lani once more. For those in the ASEAN region, please reach out and nominate Women in Security for the ASEAN region 2021. We've got till the end of May, but nominations are coming in strong. And with our ASEAN and Singapore correspondent, Jane Lowe, has just released this from the National Computational Infrastructure with Professor Sean Smith. Very well worth listening to. I put out a minute sort of takeaway today, looking at sort of the genome sequencing and the use of high-performance computing. Well done to Jane on that, and thank you to Sean Smith for his time. Very interesting, goes for about half an hour, and it's the latest episode. We've also released the latest edition of the Cyber Risk Leaders magazine, so please check that out. It's about 20 articles, and we do have, watching from Brisbane, g'day, thank you very much, Shane, and also from Perth, Dale Robinson. G'day, Dale, good to see you. For our sponsors, we're sponsored by RSA and the RSA Secure ID Suite. We're also supported this month by ALC. So if you're looking at cybersecurity courses and certified training, check out the ALC Suite. Most of their ads are on our websites. And also for a couple of weeks, supporting the Australian Taxation Office. They've both got junior and senior cybersecurity roles available. So please check them out. And very good sort of the way that they've put those together in this particular campaign. They're quite strong on who they're looking for. Also next month, we've got our SCADA and ICS cybersecurity course with Daniel Ehrenreich from Israel. So check that out. And we've also I've finally got my Indian Tiger. So we've got our Cyber War series on our merchandise, and we're expanding the merchandise on the MySecurity TV shop. So have a look at those. So look, that's enough from the marketplace, and we're going to move into our space program. I've been looking forward to this. It's taken a while to get Rod on board, but thank you very much for his time. And just as a very brief introduction, our last space episode was a couple of weeks ago, where we spoke to Defence Tech, and we looked at the space launch capability and the rotating detonation engine research going on at University of Sydney, RMIT, and a couple of others as well. And some news of the day on our space and defence tech website. This is a staff-written news piece on why NASA is pushing into the commercial space sector. We've also got, just today, news out today that the SmartSat CRC has appointed former Australian senior engineer from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. He's on as a chief research officer. And also we've got Chris Flaherty, or Dr. Chris Flaherty, who is writing a range of articles on this channel. The latest has been Space Warfare Maneuver, and he's writing with the Space Warfare Analysis Lab, sort of projected and forward-looking articles. So without further ado, Rod Smith, Resilient Multi-Mission Space Starshot Leader. Rod, what a title. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. It is a title. It's a bit of a mouthful, so I appreciate that.
Very good.
Thank you.
I must get a copy of your business card. It must be a good one to hand out if you're still using them. So, and as I mentioned to you pre-interview, I've been introducing you, but not actually knowing what the Starshot Leader sort of is. But I do like the resilient key word there, resilient multi-mission space starshot. So we've got a range of slides. Maybe just walk us through. Maybe I'll start with this first one in the context of the background and your role and within the DSTG.
Oh, thanks for that. And hello, everyone, wherever you may be. So as Chris mentioned, I'm Rod Smith. I lead the Resilient Multi-Mission Space Starshot program here within Defence. That's led by the Defence Science Technology Group, which is the science technology arm for Defence and National Security in Australia. And that's how we're leading this program. I think we all know how important space is. I don't think we'd be having this podcast today if we didn't have access to space systems. Probably wouldn't be able to find my way home half the time without Google Maps, or wouldn't be able to do my banking if I didn't have those timing services that are so important to syncing up so much of our national infrastructure. But of course, we all know how critical space is to defence and our national security. If you haven't read them, I'm sure most of you have, if not all of you, the Defence Strategic Update and the Force Structure Plan are really continuing the journey for defence in becoming increasingly a sovereign controlled and ultimately, hopefully, a sovereign developed capability here in Australia. So we want to be able to move forward and deliver those trusted and resilient services to our warfighters into the future. And you can see there that statement is directly out of the Defence Strategic Update 2020 that assured access to space is critical to ADF warfighting effectiveness, situational awareness and delivery of real-time communications information. And hopefully, as I go through the Starshot today, you'll hear a bit more about how this Starshot Strategic Research Program, and by that we're meaning Horizon 3, future capabilities beyond the immediately currently planned phases of capabilities, moving into future capabilities, and how we're going to use S&T to bring from concepts in space into capabilities into space through the future acquisition programs. So next, please, Chris. Already had a bit of context. Resilience comes into this as well, of course. Space is already congested, contested, and competitive. And every time Elon Musk launches something new with the Starlink constellation or somebody else, OneWeb, when they get going again, we're increasingly making that a congested environment. So there's a lot of stuff up there, and being able to understand what that space environment looks like and the things that are orbiting around us is important. But it's also increasingly contested and competitive. And so that's where particularly the resilience aspect comes into this, as we expect and already recognise that space is a warfighting domain, and Defence has stood up the space domain here, led by Air Force, with the Chief Air Force as the senior officer responsible for the space domain in Australia. And so that's really an important development for Australia, and a recognition of how important space is and how critical it is to our defence operations.
And without sort of jumping on forward, and I know there's a couple of slides here, but how much of an uplift is going on potentially percentage-wise from the latest sort of force review? And because it's obviously not a new thing for Australia, but the key word I've been hearing and we've been hearing is sovereignty, and having that sovereign launch capability as well. Is this a sort of a key priority? Where would that be, and how much of that uplift is required?
It's a lot. I think Prime Minister Morrison talked about a space economy of 12,000 jobs, $20 billion space economy. And defence is going to be a really important part of that. We want to contribute to that, and we need to contribute to that overall space economy moving forward. At the same time, in terms of investment, this is the largest investment in a program, I suppose, $10 billion over the next 10 years and then more further out. And so we are significantly increasing our capabilities in terms of people, in terms of expertise, in terms of future operational capabilities. I can't specifically give you a percentage, but I can say that the Starshot program itself within Defence Science Technology Group is looking to have around about 30% of our internal staffing and cash, our allocation resources devoted to it within 3 to 4 years.
Right. And how are you finding industry? Because we've contacted and we've been in contact sort of, I'm seeing defence moving into the private sector. The universities are definitely there from research, but they're very specialised. You know, they're not large research teams, they're highly specialised teams. And other than, say, some of the space programs that we have, like Gilmore Space and a few of the other startups, how much are you seeing from industry, or how much is required from industry? It's very sort of defence and university driven so far. There's a lot of commercial opportunities there. And as I kind of mentioned in the introduction, NASA's starting to commercialise, and we've spoken to Cleos Space, which is ASX listed, but they're European based. Yeah, how much do you see the opportunity there in industry, and what we're seeing in, say, Adelaide with the SmartSat CRC and that integration of industry as well? I know it's not really a clear question. It's a hard one to answer, but yeah, where do you see industry playing a role in the importance?
Let's be clear, we need industry, and we need to develop and grow that space industry here in Australia to meet, obviously, not only our national ambitions, but our defence ambitions as well. And so we are absolutely committed to working and partnering with industry to deliver the Starshot, for example, and then obviously industry will then hopefully help them position for future capability opportunities as well, but also not just as part of defence, but a part of the national space sector. And that's why we're working really closely with the Australian Space Agency as well to try and provide an integrated view into government, I suppose, as best as we can, giving competing civilian and military missions. But through that, and putting in place policy frameworks, putting in place initiatives, doing activities where we can demonstrate and bring space heritage and bring real space heritage, hopefully position industry to get not only for Australia, but even into the global supply chains down the track.
Yeah, sounds like there's a lot to do still as well. I'll move over to the next slide, and we've still got plenty of time as well. And if you've got some questions from the audience, g'day Douglas, he should be in Hong Kong. If you've got some questions or specific questions, welcome to fire them in. Yeah, I'll keep going with this one, Rod, Defence Innovation and S&T.
Oh, thanks, Chris. So it's worthwhile mentioning here. In fact, I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll touch on your previous question as well. One of the things that we're trying to do in this Starshot is actually leverage off the new space initiatives. You know, I mentioned Elon Musk, there's plenty of others in Australia, Myriota, Fleet, a whole range of EOS, a whole range of companies that are already in doing activities and have got heritage already and are growing their capabilities. And so we really want to see defence being able to leverage the best of new space in terms of technologies and approaches. So that's really important to us as well. So I just wanted to cover off on that from the previous slide. If you don't mind, I'll just do this one quickly. So back in May, we launched the new Defence Science Technology strategy. It is not the DSTG S&T strategy, it is Defence's S&T strategy, More Together 2030. And under that, it's about really trying to change the way we do business and way we deliver defence, S&T and innovation. The Chief Defence Scientist, Professor Tanya Munro, is the Defence Capability Manager now for Innovation and Science Technology. And in that strategy, we talk about trying to deliver focus, scale and impact. And what do we mean by that? We mean by focus on defence's highest priority needs. By scale, we mean we recognise, we know we cannot do this all within government, and we see this as a partnership between ourselves, between industry, academia, and our international collaborations as well. And by impact, what we mean is, from the beginning, we are looking at transition pathways and making sure that the focus, the needs that we're after, is going to hopefully deliver and/or position us to make better decisions or position exemplar capabilities into our future operations. And then as part of that, it introduced this Science, Technology and Research, or Starshot program, which is a series. There's 8 initial Starshots, of which the Resilient Multi-Mission Space Starshot is one of those. And so when I talk about 30%, it's across those 8 programs within Defence Science Technology Group. But we are also looking at that. That's just our contributions. We're now looking at how we grow that and bring the Starshot, and in my case, the Resilient Multi-Mission Space Starshot, into a sustained and dedicated program, delivering that impact at the end of the day.
Nice. Well, now we know what Starshot stands for. That's the main purpose of today's episode. Very good. And that's obviously very broad, focus, scale, and impact. And I take it you're working on all 3 at the same time as you just kind of work through. And again, just to sort of reiterate for the audience today, this is defence focused. So this is obviously defence requirements in this area. So, yeah, outside of our sort of other areas that we've dealt with industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though, as I said earlier, we do work very closely with Space Agency and SmartSat, and I'll talk about SmartSat in a little bit of time. But so as you can see there from the slide, this is the sort of signature or the poster slide for the Resilient Multi-Mission Space Starshot. This program is sponsored by the Chief of Air Force as the Space Domain Lead for Australia. My boss, Andrew Seedhouse, is the lead chief or the senior responsible officer, and I'm responsible for defining, delivering, developing and executing this program. So that is my job. I think what you can see there on the left-hand side, the impact we're going after is those defence missions. We are looking for space services, trusted and assured space services in a highly contested operating environment being delivered direct to our warfighter. So you can see that we're looking at providing satellite communications. We're talking about providing PNT, precision navigation and timing services, and intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance or situational awareness services. So that data that you can collect from space, it can help you execute and undertake your defence missions. We are deliberately focused Starshot on smart, small satellites. There are plenty of high-end capabilities. For example, in the SATCOM, there are the geostationary satellite communications. I'm sorry, I'm for defence, I do use a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of high-end commercial and military capabilities there. We want to look at blended architectures and using those new space approaches. So what can a low Earth orbit or a non-geo constellation, for example, bring to the warfighter and delivering those effective services into the future? So that's really where we're sort of focusing Starshot on.
And I suppose those they won't be up all the time. You'll only deploy them in sort of a battle environment as well. I take it there's various scenarios that you would be looking at.
Actually, that gets back to your comment about resilience. We expect that there will be an element of sustained 24/7, 365-day a year services, because our warfighters are always deployed around the world, and we need to provide those services to them. But we also expect those things to be able to be agilely adapted on as we go. So even potentially from orbit to orbit, we may want to change things for each orbit. We may need to replenish due to various activities, or we might have a failure on one of our satellites. We need to get a new one into orbit. So that's one part of resilience, that sort of being able to have many dispersed, but also being able to replenish and also to agilely adapt as we go. So we're looking at all those elements of resilience and everything in between, if I put it that way. So it's a fairly broad remit that I've got. And multi-mission as well, not just individual ones. We want to look at aspects of each of those missions on each satellite, for example.
Very good. I've got a question. I'll write the question. We'll keep going, but it's things like sort of machine learning and how these are, you're sort of mapping this out, not just the roadmap, but sort of not so much war gaming, probably the wrong term, but just gaming what the capabilities could be and how they interact, the interoperability, the interdependence. It's extremely complex, but I take it you would be applying, say, a defence in depth approach and various sort of principles as to what you do with space. It's a sort of a domain that crosses, a bit like cybersecurity. It crosses all of those platforms of land, sea, and air as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the challenges, of course, for all this. Yeah. It is ubiquitous in that sense of being able to, we rely on those services from space. And we rely on space services not only for when we're deployed offshore, but even onshore defence missions for, say, the flooding. If we had remote sensing satellites up there, we could potentially apply those to support our disaster relief operations, for example, in as well. So it is a really complex multi-domain problem, and to be blunt, we're going to have to focus at some point in time in specific aspects of it. AI and machine learning will be one of those key areas. We want to look at that at the space edge, as we're calling it. We want to be able to put that sort of capability onto our satellites and dynamically change that as necessary to meet our mission needs.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to work with you guys. I'd be too distracted. I want to sort of look at everything, hence why we do this program. And this is kind of answering that kind of question here, the exemplar resilient multi-mission space capabilities,
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, we sort of had this concept of having a smart cloud in space, because the users don't really care where the information comes from. They just need it, and they need it without necessarily even knowing they need it or even necessarily asking for it. We want to be able to provide and demonstrate exemplar small satellite constellations, not only as sovereign ones, but also in partnership with our coalition and regional partners where appropriate, to demonstrate how we could deliver those services to our warfighter. And to do that, we obviously need to also know what the space environment, what's happening up there. So that's that bottom left-hand part of that diagram.
And do you see that there's a real opportunity there for Australia for those niche areas, say for the CubeSats and the like, and some of the very interesting work that's been coming out of some of the universities? We do need to specialise, but that creates opportunity.
It absolutely does. There's real opportunity. We've been certainly, we are trying as hard to get this moving as quickly as possible, and we've been engaging with universities, industries for a little while now. We're getting close now to getting some of the real building blocks in place so we can start to really build out our first exemplar missions that we're going to go after and start to seed and shape those activities. And hopefully some folk who are listening in have seen some of the information come out on AusTender, our tender website, and have already submitted their submissions as part of that. And we're looking forward to partner with you on this journey together.
Very good. Okay, a couple more, and then we'll bring on, we've got Department 13 and AVCRM in the background. So, gents, I'll bring you on as soon as we've finished on this part one.
Yep.
Sorry, Rod?
Yeah, so here, this is the way we're structuring our program at the moment. We're structuring, first of all, around our actual defence missions that we're going after, which is ISR, as I talked about earlier, certainly satellite communications, and then space domain awareness. Then also we're looking at cross-mission themes, resilience and autonomy. That's where, for example, AI will come into it. Not only AI and processing our sensors, but, for example, if we have a fault on us, so like, could we do AI techniques to actually rectify that fault rather than waiting for this satellite to go quiet, looking at the data, trying to work out what's going on? Can we progress that onto the satellite in the future? Can we, if there's something coming at us, can that system autonomously determine that there might be a conjunction or an event where we may have two satellites hit each other, and be able to do something on that, either through maneuver or some other mode that makes our systems more resilient? And then finally, we're looking at the actual missions themselves and the operations of that, so the exemplar systems that we want to build and the operations that we want to undertake, and the experimentation we want to do as part of that. And then also what we're calling space missions analysis, which is really about doing model-based systems engineering and modelling simulation to support not only this program, but also more generally our future space capabilities, and being able to look at the mix and match and what various sensors and various capabilities might bring in, and help us guide our investment as much as work out what's the sort of best constellation in the future, for example.
And it's interesting, we're moving on to drones and drone detection next. It's that aerospace and then the space is very close. There must be a lot of sort of crossover and sort of modularization from these systems. What you might discover and apply in a space domain will then be applied elsewhere as well, particularly, say, the autonomous systems and that machine learning.
Absolutely. I think, in fact, some ways it's more of a crossover from what we know now here in the air and land and maritime domain, and moving it into space, because we are all on this journey together. We're fairly sort of, in a sense, we're a lot of startup sort of national space sector. I'm sure some people will say, no, we've been in space for a long time, and I'd certainly agree with that, but certainly there's a lot of SMEs out there. There's a lot of new companies coming to the fore, a lot of companies starting space activities. And we can bring a lot of that expertise that already exists and see how well and what's applicable to the space domain and what's new, and then we can go after those research problems in the what's new space.
Yeah, very interesting. And the other thing we always look at is the security, the cybersecurity around this is critical. not just on protection of the research, but also the way that the systems operate. This one, the strategy.
Yeah, so this is really what our sort of 4 pillars that we've put in place, not stovepipes, but pillars to deliver us the Starshot. We obviously have some really good relationships with the international research community. We've been working with them for many years, obviously within defence circles, but also more broadly, and we're looking to leverage off those, also the SIROs of the world and those as well that can help in that area, for example. The SmartSat Cooperative Research Centre, as everyone knows, has been established a couple of years now. Defence is the second largest contributor to the SmartSat Cooperative Research Centre, both in cash and in-kind support. And so we fund our investment in the SmartSat CRC to do this high-risk, high-payoff technology development through our Next Generation Technologies Fund Space Capabilities theme, which is headed by Dr. Nick Stacey, my colleague. Then actually, we actually only had 3 initial delivery pipelines or pillars, but we got some feedback early on that we needed to have a separate opportunity there just explicitly for industry and academia that may not be coming through the SmartSat CRC, because we were looking for novel technologies and novel ideas, and also people who, for their own reasons, want to not necessarily be a part of the SmartSat CRC. So we added that in a couple of months into the Starshot in the middle of last year to say, hey, we don't have to all go through the SmartSat CRC. We want to be adaptable here and take advantage of everybody's good ideas. And then the final one, which I cannot talk too much about, which is our strategic partner that we're right in the middle of doing a tender evaluation to select a strategic partner in space systems integration to help us deliver those exemplar missions into the future. And so apologies to everybody, I cannot give you an exclusive today, Chris. You'll have to wait a little bit longer for that one.
We'll definitely try to have you on once that is released. How much we had the advanced manufacturing growth centres and the range of sort of innovation centres that the Australian government has had. Have you had much to do with those as well? And I know that they did have a number of sort of space-related programs as well. Are you satisfied that everything's feeding sufficiently into each other from this innovation?
Yes and no. I'm satisfied that we've reached out a fair bit and we've had a range of conversations as much as we can, and we continue to do that. I do think, though, that there's been a little bit of a hiatus between that initial reaching out last year and trying to get this Starshot really going, because the next step, of course, is to come with, hey, here's our plans, what do you think? Get everyone fully engaged and make some decisions, and that'll be the next stage that we'll be moving into fairly soon. As we get that, once we get a strategic partner on board, then we'll be going as quickly as we can and re-evaluating where we're at.
Yeah, well, at least you're working to a clear strategy. There'll be a lot of noise in this space for you, and as well, you don't want to miss those opportunities when you see or there is a good piece of research that you potentially miss. Would probably be worst case scenario as well. So,
exactly.
Yeah, we'll finish up on this one, and this is the potential roadmap over the next decade. It's a fascinating decade moving forward. And Rod, just briefly, what's your background? Where did you come from for this role?
So I was a group leader in Defence Science Technology Group. I've spent most of my career in Defence Science Technology. I did spend a little bit of time in Russell, in the headquarters in Canberra, working in the intelligence community at the start of my career in what's now AGO, the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation. So that's I had a science degree. I did meteorology and oceanography, would you believe? And so it's a lot of time to get remote sensing data and the environment and those sort of things. And it just went from there, I suppose.
Well, I suppose that's, again, my background. Once you get to a certain age, and sorry to show my age here, but now looking out to the next decade, how exciting is this in terms of what you're seeing and the speed of development? Yeah.
It's really exciting. For me, yeah, this is great. I mean, I've been a space geek for many years. My name was micro-printed onto the Perseverance rover, along with 11 million others. So that's there on Mars until someone collects it and puts it in a museum somewhere. But it's really, it is exciting. And really, this sort of is one view of the Starshot. This is a view about our potential indicative satellite mission program. So we're going and looking at increasing complexity through that. So maybe getting one up initially and then eventually moving to a resilient multi-mission autonomous satellite constellation to demonstrate that exemplar capabilities. Doesn't mean we won't be doing other things along that journey and in other activities. So please don't take this as being set in stone or even encapsulating all of the activities we're going to do. And we're really trying to move from that bottom left of we've done a few with Uni New South Wales and Air Force. We put up a CubeSat called Buccaneer, a risk mitigation mission. Our main one's going up next year. Air Force is doing the M2 program. There's a few others going on in industries now, and other governments as well, other government agencies. But we want to move from those sort of CubeSats to, say, around about the small satellite, the microsatellite 200 kilogram class as part of this program. So we really want to do a step change in Australian capability, because we expect that that's going to be a spot that's both affordable and realistic for Australia to be able to aspire to within the next 5 to 10 years, as well as being able to deliver enough military capability and provide military useful capability into the future in that sort of disaggregated space concept in the future. So we really see us as being, I suppose, the custodians, one of the custodians of trying to drive the Australian space sector into along the way that would help it position much better for future defence capability options and being part of those programs.
Nice. One thing that has come up on our previous episodes is also the sovereign launch capability, and when we would expect to start to see sovereign launches taking place. One milestone is 2024 or thereabouts. Is that about right?
So sovereign launch is really good. We've had many discussions with various folk, the Gilmore folk, with the various ranges as well, and others are looking at space launch in Australia. This is my personal view. I cannot imagine a resilient space capability for defence in 10 to 15 years' time without some ability to do sovereign launch.
Yeah.
At the moment, Defence is still developing its defence space strategy. That's being led out of Air Force headquarters at the moment, and we hope to have that out by the middle of the year. And we don't currently have launch per se as a research activity in this Starshot, but I need launch. Wouldn't it be great if my first mission on 2024 is launched on Australian, from Australian soil on an Australian launcher? Yep. And that would just be a fantastic outcome, I think, if we can get to that. Okay,
well, we will sort of mark 2024 as that. I know a few of the industry that we've talked to definitely want that. We've had South Australia, Northern Territory and Queensland as potential sites or select sites. So we'll definitely be monitoring that. So thank you so much, Rod Smith, the Starshot leader, and that's Science, Technology and Research SHOT, and that's what they're aiming for with the Intelligence, Surveillance and Space Division in Defence Science and Technology Group. It really is a fascinating area, and we've given it a good sort of half an hour. We'll keep the audience wanting more, and after that tender comes out and the nominations have been selected, I hope to have you back on. So thank you, Rod, so much for that. And appreciate the slide deck as well, mate. Very, very interesting. And there's no questions from the audience. So we're going to let you go and enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate your time. Thanks again. Bye. See you later. Bye-bye. Very interesting. And I had about 10 other questions, and I didn't want to put him into a corner. He might not have been better to ask them. So thanks, Rod. I do appreciate your time. And he's going to leave us for the afternoon. Okay, so now we're going to move from space to the aerospace domain, and make sure I've got my next slide coming up. And they've been waiting patiently. I've got Lee Croft and Jonathan King. Gents, thanks for joining us.
Just coming off mute. You're welcome.
Yeah, there you go. wouldn't be a call without being on mute. So Chief Executive Officers, and it's I've just been saying AVCRM, and I know Department 13. We've done a podcast in the past with Department 13,
yep.
And AVCRM. Maybe let's start with what's AVCRM standing for.
Advanced Compliance and Risk Management. So,
got it.
There's a few different names. People say AVCRM, AVCRM. We've even had AVCRM. So,
didn't want to even try. Beautiful. So, Advanced Compliance Risk Management, and that's really what this session is about. With the media release, you two have joined forces. So, we've now got a drone detection platform with a compliance and risk management platform integrated into that. Lee, let's start with you and maybe talk us about Department 13 and the platform itself, and also how business is as well. We've been covering off on drones and drone detection technologies for some time. How's 2021 looking for you? There's a lot going on in this domain.
Sure. So I'll probably bring you up to speed with, I can't remember when the last podcast was. It probably wasn't in my
It was
tenure.
a few years ago, mate.
Yeah, it'll
Yes.
be a few years ago. And look, both the markets moved on, and so has D13. So we've changed strategy slightly over the last 18 months and moved away from, I think you'll remember Mesmer as our flagship product, which is drone
Yep,
mitigation.
that's the one.
So Mesmer is still alive and well, and we're seeing.
And I think you got up to Mesmer 2 or 3.
Oh, Mesmer 1.5 we're on right now.
Oh, okay, there you go. Sorry.
We've got Mesmer 2 coming out shortly. Certainly software releases have been much more incremental than the actual hardware releases, but Mesmer's going very well. Our overseas markets are picking up. We've sold in the last year, you know, through to India, Indonesia, UAE, Thailand, etc., etc. Places where legislation isn't hampering the use of drone mitigation. You know, we're obviously governed here by CASA. We're governed in Europe by CAA, you know, in the UK, and obviously in America with the FAA. So the use of these types of technologies is not as well received in Western democratized countries, but in other places where they can use them, we're seeing a lot of uptake in that space. But the change of strategy out of that was to build a commercial product, one that we could take to market here domestically and build a considered market for that. And that was the natural collision between ourselves and my good friend now, Jonathan, over at AVCRM. So, you know, it was obvious to us that there was a commercial solution that was needed, something that did not mitigate but was passive, so it could still detect a drone, still identify a drone, still attribute and locate a drone, and give that information through the enterprise or government or, you know, a smart city approach, whatever might be applicable. But to do that in isolation of compliance, risk and management was a fool's errand, to be perfectly honest with you. So, you know, coming together with Jonathan was absolutely amazing, because all of a sudden, you know, every drone operation in Australia is governed by CASA. You need to have a platform, you know, such as Jonathan's, to actually do those missions, get them out there. And simply no point in doing that unless you've got a full picture, an operational picture of what's happening around you in the drone world. So we moved away from just purely military government-esque operations and into the commercial world, and then met Jonathan, and it's been, you know, that's kind of where we are today.
And it's obviously not your core business to start building a compliance and risk management platform. Maybe advanced CRM, I'll just call you advanced CRM, we'll stick with that. How long have you been around? It takes a while to build up a CRM platform, and who was looking for who here? It sounds like Department 13 might have been looking for it, or you two just cross paths and think, hey, this is actually a good deployment?
I feel like we're both looking for each other. So AVCRM's, you know, we registered in 2015. We started off as an aerodrome management tool, and then our second product was drone compliance. There's 4 directors that founded the business. We're all commercial pilots by trade. So we wanted to bring the technology and our spin on running the complexities around large operations. So we went down that ecosystem of aerodrome management first, and then into drones as it was increasing through some of our connections, and throughout there grew out both products together. In that journey, we did get some inquiries from the aerodrome space, and also especially in the emergency services arms about drone detection. And I had some experience around some kind of correctional facilities and around counter drone products as well. So
you built you had built the platform for sort of air traffic and drone activity anyway, right? But then you found the inquiries coming in saying, can you find them and detect them as well?
So we don't sit in the air traffic space as such. We sit in the actual aerodrome compliance run with CASA. So how to run an aerodrome, how to ensure that the aerodrome is compliant to receive aircraft, etc. And then the same concept of mission planning and record keeping for your drone business as well. And then we were looking into the purpose of understanding what Lee was talking about, and Lee was looking as well. And we happened to have a mutual contact that kind of put us in touch with each other, and it just kind of triggered our conversation of a new way to look at this concept. You know, there's a whole world of information you can learn from when you combine us together, and the way that we look at the data to, rather than be reactive, be more proactive, if you will. So.
And how have you deployed it? Is it one system, one dashboard? Have you had to do a bit of development there, or which one are you sitting on, or have you merged the two together? And maybe that was a good one for Lee.
I'll go first, and I'll let Jonathan tail in this one for me. So we have obviously a system ourselves, but it was a pretty obvious answer to integrate our hardware directly into Jonathan's platform. Jonathan sits there with quite a substantive client base already. And purely for ease of adoption, and ease of people moving on their own internal journey away from, with client compliance, risk and management, but into operations and drone detection, much easier for them to just flip a switch in a module within Jonathan's platform and actually be able to turn that capability on. And from our perspective, we go and deploy a piece of hardware on the site that actually listens for the drones, picks everything up, and then Jonathan can display that data. His way of doing it as opposed to ours, and I guess you can probably imagine this. We had a very product focused around ours. Let's deliver some views of drones and how things work out to our customers, and that's okay for some markets. But the market we're talking about with Jonathan and why we've come together, he's got a very operational, rich context around how drones are used, why they're used, the compliance, the record keeping, the mission management, the replay of data, all these types of things that simply aren't available. And I don't have the resources to go and build that type of product out. So we effectively handed the keys to Jonathan. We've taken the first step, which is Dial, so our passive product, and we've just started the journey with Mesmer as well. So we'll give Jonathan the keys to our mitigation product, because we see time and time again in every conversation that Jonathan and I have with a client, it's all around critical national infrastructure. They want to get on the journey to mitigation. They really, really do.
They have to.
Yeah.
They can't just find them or know that they're there. They have to be able to mitigate them somehow. But again, It's also from industry perspective or the end users. And often there's a large market there just of the end users in this space. Likewise, they don't need to be building their own compliance and risk management systems. If it comes with that or they come together, it's an easy fit. What's the deployment for it? Is it web-based and licensed, or it's on-prem? How do you deploy this?
So it depends on which arm they come from, but we're authenticated through an API. So it would be the same as if they were to purchase their drone detection system from Department 13 and get the standard product. Department 13 would then authenticate into us, and then that module would then turn on through that authentication. So it's really quite simple. It's controlled by the hardware side from Department 13 of what the user license agreement is through the technology into us. So.
And how have you adapted this for different countries? Lee mentioned you're in various markets. Was there much adaptability from the compliance perspective?
Because ICAO, it makes it quite simple. So we're more focusing at this stage on the critical infrastructure, and then in Australia we are jumping down a little bit of emergency management trials and looking at your operational airspace for safety case reasons. So not the big brother approach. It's more we have a situation at hand. Let's check our airspace before we launch our mission. We're planning our mission in AVCRM already. What does it look like? It's just another risk factor to tick off that, yep, it's clear, or no, it's not clear. Let's go ensure that the airspace is safe before we launch. So there's an asset protection which has multiple key stakeholders. So our aerodrome management, for instance, that module turns on. All of a sudden, you can treat drones kind of like you treat wildlife at an airport, where it's the airport's problem to manage, but it's the airline's problem if they hit it. So how do we engage key stakeholders and things like that? So it does go quite a lot further than just what it initially looks like. But yeah, it's we're pretty excited about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Go, Lee.
I was just going to say, it's taken a couple of steps further. Our first deployment is actually over in Thailand, where we've deployed Mesmer to protect Thai Air Force against, you know, rogue drone attacks and, you know, using it in its truest form. But within that, and that concept of operations of deploying that at an airport that is co-shared with commercial aircraft and also military aircraft, having that management of the drone piece was really key. So this is where Jonathan's platform really bubbled up to the top. You know, so we've deployed out there, and from that, you know, deployment where we've got Mesmer and the drone module within AVCRM, you know, deploying that whole installation out to the Thai Air Force. We've got other calls for regional airports around the area in Asia saying, well, this platform is really good, this AVCRM platform is really good. We'd like to have a look at that and dial it down and use our dial product, which is the commercial one. You know, because not everybody is able to mitigate. Obviously, the Thai Air Force can, other people can't. So it's actually proliferating business out on its own, and we're getting, you know, sort of feedbacks and foldbacks from that, which again, you know, as Jonathan just said, is pretty exciting because you see the true value when you bring these two together. It's almost a 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah. You know, in a client size, it is a turnkey where people are not left wondering about, oh, have I thought about that? Have I thought about that? It's the real end-to-end solution, left of arc to right of arc, that a customer can go and deploy and get the right results day one. So it's pretty cool.
And how much? I mean, we just spoke to Rod at Defence there in for their space program, but how much outside of defence are you finding around sort of critical infrastructure, corrective services? How are you finding the market generally? You can touch on Australia and New Zealand if you like, but also elsewhere in the region.
I can talk from. I'll talk from our current deployments. We've deployed our first ever deal. You'll probably remember this was with maybe we covered this in a previous podcast, but was with the Mexican prisons down in down the south down there to stop people putting contraband, you know, into a controlled airspace or into a controlled space. So we've actually grown that piece of business out, and there's a lot of interest across North America around these types of technologies. The problem set over there is you know, they run a much larger penal community than we do here in Australia. However, the problem sets and the use cases remain the same around the concept of operations for drones and how they might impact that controlled space. So we're seeing a lot of uptake on that. I might let Jonathan's got some first-hand experience here in Australia around this, and this is part of his client base. So I might let Jonathan tail onto this and tell us about Australia.
Yeah, we're getting interest for sure, because obviously we've already got existing client relationships and a bit of trust there as well. But people are very excited about a sovereign capability in this space. There is a couple around the place, but the relationship of we kind of stick to what we know and we're local is really helping the players into Australia at the moment during the current climate. So
do you tend to be tender based? They call out for a tender, or is it a direct purchase, particularly I'd say for government related? Tends to be tender related?
I don't think they're mature enough to have got to a tender point yet. I'll be honest. If I look at the global market for mitigation and detection, you know, back in 2018, you know, everyone came rushing to market really quickly after the Gatwick incident, and everybody wanted to buy mitigation and get moving. They all dipped their toe in the water, all made huge mistakes, withdrew, and then they've come back out in what I'd consider now to be robust tender processes. But they're just coming to fruition across the globe now. I don't think Australia's at that point from a governmental perspective to do that. I think there's a huge opportunity, and certainly Jonathan and I are having direct conversations with, you know, partners, large partners that provide services into that space around how we can capitalize on that, you know, and deliver those services through in shorter time rather than going through a governmental process. Because, you know, if there's existing contracts there, the uplift for these types of technologies is not onerous to actually deliver these capabilities out on a domestic level. So the key really for us as two organizations is having, we're both Australian organisations now. Department 13 is now Australian. You know, it's that sovereign capability, the sovereign build, to be able to be the ability for us to react and be nimble to the different concept of operations and use cases and deliver different things. So emergency services, we went and built a portable unit within 2 weeks so that we can meet that use case. So we can do a lot more in country, which provides a lot more capability uplift for Australia.
And I suppose they do probably want a proof of concept first, just to work out what that capability, as you say, that maturity of knowing what the capabilities are, and then some of the business cases or the use cases just for drones, but also drone detection as well. How much are you working with CASA? Have they reviewed this, approved this? Does it require approval? What's sort of the regulation around that? I imagine, Jonathan, you're right across that.
Yeah, so it's realistically, Lee sits in that space more than we do because obviously it's his hardware, but, you know, I would say it's less CASA and more ACMA and Securities Act due to its frequency scanning at the end of the day. So as soon as you're tampering, so your mitigation, your mesmers, you're encroaching into the whole CASA space. But before that, you're more monitoring frequencies and and looking at members of the public. So yeah, there's two sections to it, and Lee spends his days dealing with those headaches.
Yeah, look, John's spot on. You know, ACMA is, we've been through the process with Dial, the commercial product, because it just listens, we're not transmitting, so therefore it was much easier to break ground with that one. So we've got that through, and that's now accredited for sale here in Australia. So that was a tick in the box. That arrived with us just prior to Christmas, actually. So that was a great leap forwards for us in terms of how we can approach the market. We have kicked off the journey with Mesmer. In fact, I had a call with ACMA this week around Mesmer and that type of technology, and there is an appetite for government to help support ourselves and particularly the way that we do drone mitigation with protocol manipulation, because it can provide a safe outcome. Governments do like that, and it provides a known outcome. Governments do like that, so there is an appetite for them to work with us. And also Jonathan, and then we have a customer in the wings that we're in discussions with that could prove to be groundbreaking for us if we can join the dots and get those three conversations happening in tandem. So watch this space on that one, but you might see some movement on the Mesmer side as well with ACMA in the coming months. Interesting.
And what's the limitations? I think Professor Blackson from Australian National University just tweeted out yesterday he's doing a drone project on where drones are and their capabilities and the like. What's the limitation on what you can detect, or are the drones that you can detect identified as well? Like, does the market or do you announce who you can identify? Maybe just talk us through the detection process, because I definitely get the compliance and risk management approach on operating drones and the like. But yeah, where's the product at and the capability as to the general market available drones that are out there?
Okay, so let's go back to probably I'll take you back to basics. So we do protocol manipulation. So we are not a kinetic kill for drones. We're not a jamming technology. We're not any of those. So we effectively we demodulate the RF signal between a drone and its controller. We turn that into ones and zeros, and we inject ourselves back into it. So that means that we have to be a library-based system, and the drones within our libraries are put into our library via several mechanisms, and we have a constant body of work and a constant team of people working on looking at which new drones are coming into market, which ones are going to take over the market. So, you know, DJI has a great footprint right now. Skydio is coming on. What's going to happen with Skydio, et cetera, right? So we focus on, you know, the drones, the large-scale drones that are coming into market, certainly the consumer drones, and we enter those into the library. Once they're in there, we've got a few things that we can do. So there's different stats on this depending on the way you look at it, but detecting drones is pretty easy. We detect most of the market. Okay, identifying drones, and this is taking a drone down to effectively its MAC address, i.e. like an IMEI on a mobile telephone. So knowing the specific drone within a swarm, for example, or the specific drone within a fleet, et cetera, et cetera. So those two are quite simple to pull out of a drone when you've injected yourself in the protocol. Then comes, you know, attribution, which is again another library based. If we know that we've detected a DJI Mavic, then we know what it's capable of doing. So again, that can get pulled through and delivered out to the client. Then we get location. Two ways to do that. You know, we've got either we can suck the data directly out of the communications between the two and use the GPS signal from the drone, or we've got angle of arrival, which will actually give a bearing on the drone and be able to pull things around on that. Typically, we see location, you know, used heavily in military circumstances, obviously to slew other systems, because we're not a silver bullet. Other systems come around like, you know, like kinetic kills, et cetera, et cetera. So those four things are available. And then within that, you know, we've got the mitigations that we can perform on a particular drone. So land in place, go to a safe place, return to home, you know, disable audio, disable visual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
can you find out where the controller is?
Yes, if it's available, yes, we can. Some do, some don't. It simply depends on the data that these things transmit, to be perfectly honest with you. So there are, you know, a few of the controllers out there that we can do, and that's really useful in circumstances where you've got somebody, you know, not necessarily, you know, a bad drone, but a nuisance drone that's in the wrong space. You know, we can also detect the controller or get a line of bearing on the controller. You can send somebody out and say, hey, mate, can you land your drone? get it out of the way. We're trying to do real operations here, you know, and you're in our space. So where we can, we do that and we meet that use case. But not every drone is constructed the same. Not every controller is constructed the same. So again, this goes back to the body of work, and we're always going to be, you know, a couple of degrees behind the 12 o'clock hour, you know. So, you know, trying to keep up with the market, but you know, we put a lot of emphasis and a lot of effort into that, and that again, you know, is largely driven by, you know, this is an amazing partnership with Jonathan at AVCRM, because he's got this massive reach into market. He gets a lot of feedback from the market about what people are buying, which, you know, emergency services, councils, government. So we have quite a clear line of sight in terms of where we need to focus those efforts. So, you know, we lift the code.
Well, that's a fair point. Of what was your way to market? You weren't selling through the channel or anything. It was just direct sale.
As D13, no. So we were direct sales. I mean, we've got a direct sales division here. We've got one in North America as well. In the old Mesmer days, if I rewind the tape to what I call the previous administration, if I rewind the tape to those guys, it was all via channel. And I think that, you know, we'd missed a step there, because there is a lot of uncertainty in adoption of drone technology in the market still. And this is why, you know, coming together as an ecosystem, as a partnership, delivering that end-to-end solution was so important, because then it takes away all of the fear and doubt, you know, within the customer base, and we can get things moving. So we instigated a direct sales channel, and then, you know, obviously my role is to create these strategic partnerships and, you know, find the right companies to work with. And, you know, Jonathan's company was an absolute standout compared to the rest. So.
Very good. Well, look, gents, we're top of the hour. I'm going to let you go. Very interesting. Department 13, is it .com? I didn't check.
It is. Yes, .com. Yeah.
Beautiful. And Advanced CRM, and I imagine that's similar. AVCRM.com?
.net.
.net, of course. There you go. So we'll put those in the show notes as we do. But we've been joined by the Chief Executive Officers for Advanced CRM and Department 13, looking at drone detection integrated with the compliance and risk management platform. Jonathan King and Lee Croft, thank you very much for joining us on our Tech and Sec Weekly.
Cheers, thanks.
Thanks very much,
guys.
Indeed.
All the best.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. Very interesting. Drones always been we cover drones on our drasticnews.com channel, and the report of the day. This has just come out practically, I think it was yesterday. This is the Global Britain in Competitive Age, the integrated review of security, defence, development and foreign policy. And as we started off with part one today, looking at the Force Posture Review 2020 from Australia, this is pretty much the same type of approach. These are the main points for the Indo-Pacific. Renewed focus on the Indo-Pacific from the UK, working more closely with Australia, committing to deploy HMS Queen Elizabeth Carrier for the first time in 2021 to lead a British and allied task group to the Indo-Pacific, demonstrating interoperability with allies and partners and ability to project cutting-edge military power in support of NATO and international maritime security, increasing economy-wide investment in research and development to 2.4% of GDP by 2027, and increasing spending by £24 billion over the next 4 years, comfortably exceeding NATO target to spend 2% of GDP on defence, and the biggest investment in defence since the end of the Cold War. So that is on our Space and Defence channel. You can grab a copy of that. And I have reached out to the High Commissioner, the British High Commissioner to Australia, just to see if she'd be interested in coming on and discussing with us. Please check out and support the channel. Go to the mysecuritytv.shop, check out a range of merchandise there. And looking forward to the next Tech and Sec Weekly on Friday morning. We'll be streaming at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Daylight Saving Time. We're going to be joined by Anna LaBelle and Claire Pales, looking through their Secure Board book launch, and we should have a book giveaway as well, I hope, doing a bit of a book review. And then we'll be joined by Lani Rafferty, the Regional Director with Clarity, and looking at the smart meter, particularly the Schneider Electric. Clarity have identified a couple of vulnerabilities and exploits in the Schneider Electric smart meters. And Lani is well known here in Australia on IoT security and vulnerabilities, so looking forward to that. So that's it from us at the marketplace. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks for joining us on our Tech and Sec Weekly.